beautiful souls, and welcome back to Gaia Sanctorum. I'm Danielle, and this is Living the Wheel, where we follow the cycles of nature and the cosmos and the wisdom of the five bodies to navigate our human experience with ancient knowledge and embodied practices. Last week, we crossed the threshold. The sun walked into Aries, Mercury stationed direct. The new moon planted its final seed in the last degrees of Pisces, and the long dissolving season of astrological winter completed its work. We came out of the stew pot and into the fire. And now the fire is actually here. This week, March 23rd through the 29th, is not the crossing. The crossing happened. This week is what happens in the first days after. When the fire is not a metaphor anymore, but a literal condition of your life. And the scaffolding that you were relying on to hold the structure together shows you exactly where it was and was not built to last. I want to name something before we go any further. There is a particular kind of frustration that arises when your process gets disrupted by forces entirely outside of yourself. When something that you depend on just simply stops working. When you have to fight for what should have been straightforward. When the container shifts without warning and you find yourself scrambling to reclaim ground that you thought was already solid. If that has been your experience this week, you are not imagining it, and you are definitely not alone. The cosmos was already inside of that story before Monday morning even arrived. And the medicine this week is not about getting the old container back. It is about discovering what in you holds its knowing even when the container is gone. What do you forge without permission? Now, our guides for the week are Bridget and Hephaestus, and I will tell you more about both of them as we move through the week. But for now, let's look at the sky. Last week, the wheel turned completely. Mercury stationed direct, and the long inward season of processing and review began to release its grip. The sun crossed into Aries, and the new astrological new year began. The new moon planted its seeds in the final degrees of Pisces and asked what you were willing to trust to forces larger than your own management. And the sun conjunct Neptune in the first degrees of Aries reminded you that the Piscean wisdom that you cultivated all winter was not something that you left at the threshold. You carried it across on the soles of your feet. You are not in the stew pot anymore. You are in the fire. There is something very important to understand about this week before we walk through it day by day. Since around March 18th, Saturn and Pluto have been moving towards an exact sextile. And by the time we open on Monday the 23rd, that aspect is perfecting. This is not a minor background transit. Saturn sextile Pluto is the slow, deep, structural conversation between two of the most transformative forces in the sky. Pluto does not leave anything false standing, and Saturn builds only what can actually bear weight. When they are in a productive aspect together, the question being asked is whether what you are building is real, not beautiful, not inspired, not well-intentioned, real. The conversation has been happening in the background of your life since the 18th. This week, you're going to feel it directly. So on March 23rd, we open with Saturn sextile Pluto exact, and the ground underneath the week has a particular quality. Dense, honest, not unkind, but completely unwilling to pretend. The moon is going to move through supportive territory, and there is a quality of steady forward motion available if you're willing to work within reality rather than around it. And then on March 24th, Mars trines Pluto. This is a power aspect, and it is clean, purposeful force moving towards transformation. Mars trine Pluto doesn't flail. It does not rage. It identifies exactly what needs to move, and it moves it. If you've been waiting for the energy to act on something that has been sitting in the corner, waiting for your attention, Tuesday is that day. This is directed power in service of something real. And then on the 25th, this is the spine of the week. In the morning, the sun conjuncts Saturn. And then in the evening, the sun will sextile Pluto. The daytime hours on Wednesday are the moment when the forge fire is going to get turned up. The sun conjunct Saturn is not a comfortable aspect. It's an honest one. It is the moment when you look directly at what is and what is not working without the softening buffer of wishful thinking. Structures get tested, commitments get weighed. The things that you have been building either reveal their actual strength or reveal where they need more work. And then 6 hours later, the sun sextiles Pluto, and the depth underneath that honest assessment becomes available. What you find when you look clearly is not a dead end. It is the place where the real work begins. This is Hephaestus in his forge. He was thrown from Olympus without his consent. He did not choose his exile. He did not choose the conditions under which he had to build. And what he created in those conditions became the most extraordinary craftsmanship in all of mythology. He didn't wait for permission from his circumstances. He lit the forge with what he had, and he worked. Now, on March 26th, the disruption arrives with full intention. The sun squares Uranus, and the fixed structure that has been holding things in place will suddenly reveal its edges. Uranus does not destroy casually, it liberates. But liberation doesn't always feel like a gift in the moment that it's happening. Mercury square Mars as well, and communication becomes urgent, pointed, possibly heated. Speak with precision on Wednesday. Mean what you say and say what you mean. Nothing more. And then late in the evening, Venus conjuncts Chiron at 25 degrees of Aries. So after the disruption, after the friction, after the scaffolding shifts, the heart gets honest about the wound. Venus conjunct Chiron does not arrive with fanfare. It arrives quietly and often in the dark as a recognition. Something you thought was healed shows you how far you've actually come. Or something that you thought you were past shows you that it still needs tending. Either way, it's still medicine. The wound is not evidence of failure. The wound is the place where the mastery gets forged. Now, in the Celtic tradition, Brigid is the keeper of the perpetual flame. Her sacred fire at Kildare was never permitted to go out, not because conditions were always ideal, but because the tending itself was the devotion. She holds 3 sacred fires simultaneously: the fire of inspiration in the mind, the fire of the forge in the creative heart, and the fire of healing in the soul. She does not ask permission from circumstance before she lights them. Wednesday night, when the wound surfaces under the Venus Chiron conjunction, Brigid is the one who tends it. March 28th, Saturn squares Jupiter, and the tension between expansion and limitation become more explicit. You want more than the structure is currently allowing. The structure is not wrong, and the expansion is not wrong, but they aren't yet in alignment. And this square is asking you to do the work of reconciling them rather than choosing one at the expense of the other. Later in the day, Mercury squares Lilith, and the wild knowing gets challenged. Someone or something will push back on what you know to be true in your bones. Don't abandon the bone knowing to make somebody else comfortable. And then on March 29th, the week closes with two aspects that are both medicine. Chiron will square Mercury, and the wound will begin to find its language. This is the moment where what surfaced under the Venus Chiron conjunction on Wednesday night stops being just a feeling and starts becoming something that you can articulate. And then Mercury sextiles Neptune on the same day, opening the inner compass back to signal. After the friction, after the honest assessment and the wound and the structural tension, the knowing comes back online, but not the same as before. Clear. That is the arc of this week. The forge does not ask your permission, but everything it burns away was never yours to keep. Let's talk about how to live this across all 5 bodies. So your physical body, the physical body is in fire season right now. The stew pot nourishment of the winter is behind us, and the Aries activation is real and present and demanding. But the body that was dissolving and softening through Pisces can't simply snap into full Aries fire overnight. The physical work this week is building strength through sustained resistance rather than through explosive action. The forge does not rush. It applies sustained heat. The body needs the same thing. Feed the fire, build the structure. Let Aries season food carry both the warmth and the weight of it. So the first food I'm going to recommend is lamb ossobuco. This is basically the forge on a plate. Braised lamb shanks, slow cooked until the connective tissue releases and the marrow becomes the medicine. Ossobuco requires hours. It cannot be rushed. The heat must be sustained and patient, applied to what is dense and resistant until it transforms into something extraordinary. Now, the Italian lineage of this dish carries ancestral medicine, and the marrow is deeply physical body nourishment, bone building, joint supporting, collagen rich in ways that support the structural repair of Saturn transits this week, are kind of asking of your physical architecture. Make it early in the week. Well, Mars is trining Pluto and the purposeful fire is most available. Let the making of it be physical practice for everything that this week is going to ask of us. And then bacon wrapped asparagus. Asparagus pushes straight up out of the ground in Aries season, vertical and directional and completely unwilling to grow sideways. It is pure physical body spring medicine. It's deeply mineral and supporting of the kidneys, which carry the fear response in Chinese medicine, and cleansing the channels that the long winter may have clogged. Wrapped in bacon, it becomes fire medicine, the fat and salt of cured pork, delivering the kind of physical satisfaction that the Aries body craves as it activates. Make this midweek when the body needs something quick and nourishing between the intensity of the Saturn and Uranus transits. And then one of my favorites, moussaka, the Mediterranean forge in a baking dish, ground lamb for Aries season, eggplant for the depth and complexity that Pluto brings, layers of bechamel that require patience and constant attention or they break, Moussaka is not a casual meal. It is built in layers, each one complete before the next begins. And it cannot be assembled out of order. This is the physical body teaching for this week. The layers of strength being built in you through sustained resistance of isometric practice, the sustained heat of the forge fire, require the same patience and proper sequencing. Make this toward the end of the week when the body has been through the intensity and needs something that is deeply grounding and ancestral. Now, 4 herbs. The first one is one of my favorites, horseradish. This is the Aries herb that asks nothing from you except honesty. Horseradish is a fierce decongestant and circulatory activator, driving blood and warmth and energy into the physical periphery with a force that is completely unapologetic. Nothing hidden in the sinuses, the lungs, or the gut, or the emotional holding patterns of the physical body will survive fresh horseradish. This is the Saturn sextile Pluto herb for the physical body. It's not unkind, but it is completely unwilling to pretend. Grate some fresh horseradish root into meals, into sauces, into a simple vinegar tonic. Let it be the week's physical body truth. And then prickly ash. This is the herb of stagnation that will not tolerate being ignored. Prickly ash is a warming circulatory stimulant that works specifically on long held physical stagnation. The places where blood and lymph and vital force have been moving sluggishly for months, where Piscean dissolution left deposits of unprocessed winter energy. It has a distinctive tingling quality that you feel immediately in the tissues. And that quality is exactly right for the week. Sun square Uranus, and the body needs to feel its own edges clearly. Tincture throughout the week, daily in small doses, letting the physical body feel the Aries activation happening at the cellular level. And then fennel. This is the herb of courage in the ancient Mediterranean tradition, and also the herb of the digestive fire coming back online after winter. Fennel seeds were carried by warriors before battle in both Greek and Italian ancestral medicine. The aromatic oils activate the mental clarity and physical readiness that the forge requires. For the physical body this week, fennel supports the digestive fire that the Aries season awakens, helping the body metabolize both food and experience with the efficiency that the Saturn transits demand. Fresh fennel in the food, fennel seed tea. You can chew them directly before or after meals throughout the week. Now, as far as practice, I want you guys to do some isometric fire holds. The physical practice of this week is not movement. It is the sustained application of force against resistance, which is the forge method applied to the physical body. Choose your sequence: a hollow body hold on the floor, a wall sit with thighs parallel to the ground, or a plank with the entire body engaged from crown to heel. Set a timer and hold it. The forge does not ask the metal whether it's ready. It applies the heat and it holds it there until the transformation completes. Your physical body is the metal this week. The isometric hold is the forge fire. Stay in it past the moment of discomfort. The discomfort is not a signal to stop. It is the signal that the forge is working. Begin with a minute per hold and build throughout the week. Let the burning in the muscles be information about where the physical body has been holding back its own strength. And then for your journaling prompt, where in your body are you bracing against something that you did not choose? Place your hands there. What would it feel like to stop fighting the resistance and let it build your strength instead. Now let's move on to the mental body. So Mercury stationed direct last week, and the voice came back online. But coming back online does not mean that the mental body is immediately operating at full clarity. Mercury direct after a Pisces retrograde carries weeks of subconscious processing that is still making its way into language. The mental body this week is in the process of translating what it understood in the deep water into something that it can actually use in the forge fire of Aries. And then Mercury squares Mars on Wednesday, and the mental body gets tested. Can it hold its own knowing under pressure? And then Mercury squares Lilith on Saturday, and the test continues. Can it hold the wild knowing even when the structure challenges it? Feed the mental body for clarity and courage, not just comfort. So the first food that I'm going to recommend is some matcha lemonade. This is a mental body drink for the early part of the week. Matcha is the sustained focus clarity herb that it does not spike or crash the way coffee does. It has L-theanine and caffeine working together to produce a state of alert calm that the mental body needs as it moves from Mercury direct into Mercury square Mars. And the lemon brings the sharp brightness of Mercury medicine, the citrus oils, opening the mental pathways and cutting through any residual retrograde fog. Make it cold with a generous squeeze of fresh lemon. Let it be your morning mental body activator through the first half of the week. And then spring pea salad with poppy seed dressing. This is mental body food of emergence. Spring peas are one of the first bright, sweet flavors of the Aries season. They're fresh green energy carrying the quality of new information arriving after winter's long processing season. They're bright and mineral and alive. They feed the nervous system that is coming back online. And the poppy seed dressing brings a quiet Neptune thread, the dreaming quality that feeds the mental body's access to the deeper knowing underneath the rational surface. Now, you can eat this midweek when Mercury square Mars and Sun square Uranus are generating friction. Let the sweetness and the brightness of the salad be a physical reminder that clarity is still available. And then some Icelandic fish stew. The mental body's deep nourishment for the second half of the week. After the disruption and the friction and the honest assessment of Wednesday's transit, the mental body is going to need rebuilding. Icelandic fish stew is exactly that medicine. Fish is rich in omega-3 fatty acids that literally build the structural integrity of the brain. Root vegetables carrying the grounding quality that the mental body needs after being shaken. Broth that nourishes the nervous system at its foundation. The Scandinavian lineage of this dish carries a particular quality of mental fortitude, the kind of knowing that holds in the cold and the dark and the difficulty. Make this toward the end of the week when Mercury sextiles Neptune and the inner compass comes back online. Let it be the meal that feeds the translation of the wound into language. And then for herbs, elecampane. Now, this is a great soul compass herb for the mental body. In the folk tradition, elecampane has long been associated with Anula, the herb of the inner sun. The solar knowing that persists when the outside light is obscured. For the mental body this week, elecampane is specifically indicated for the experience of knowing something clearly, and then having the container around that knowing disrupted, and needing to find the knowing again, not in the structure, but in the self. The roots are warming and aromatic and supporting the respiratory system, which the mental body uses when it needs to come back to center. A decoction of the root throughout the week or a tincture daily, particularly on Wednesday and Thursday when the disruption lands, that's when you're going to have the most benefit. And then wild lettuce. This is a liminal mental body herb, one that sits at the exact boundary between rational knowing and deeper intelligence that doesn't have edges. Wild lettuce is gently sedative and analgesic, easing the mental body that has been working too hard against too much friction. It has been used for centuries in the folk tradition as a dreamtime ally, supporting the mental body in accessing the information that lives just below the threshold of ordinary consciousness. For this week, it is specifically useful at the end of the day, after the intensity of the middle of the week transits, when the mental body needs to release its grip on solving things and allow the knowing to just kind of rise naturally. You can take the tincture in the evening, particularly Wednesday through Friday. And then rowan. This is the tree of clear seeing and mental sovereignty, the tree that protects the mind from distortion and holds the vision steady when outside forces attempt to redirect it. Rowan berries carry a quality of protection specifically against false knowing, against the kind of mental confusion that arises when external disruption convinces the mind that what it knew was no longer valid. When Mercury squares Lilith on Saturday and the wild knowing gets challenged, rowan is an herb that says that knowing was real. It does not require external validation to remain true. Tincture or work with the tree directly if you have access to one. Let the mental body feel the protection of something ancient standing behind its own clarity. And then, as far as your practice, I'm going to call it a forge reframe. The mental body's fire practice this week is deliberate and daily. Every morning, before the mental body gets occupied with the task of the day, take 5 minutes with a journal or simply in stillness. Name one thing that is not working the way you planned. One disruption, one obstacle, one piece of scaffolding that shifted without your permission. Then ask yourself, what is this burning away that was never meant to stay? Not what you wish it were burning away, but what is it actually removing? The answer is honest because the forge is honest. This is not about toxic positivity. This is not pretending that the difficulty isn't real. This is the Hephaestus approach to circumstance. I didn't choose this forge, but I'm in it. And what I build here will be the best work of my life because the conditions required everything that I had. So, what story are you telling yourself about what went wrong this week? Write it down exactly how your mind tells it. Now, I want you to rewrite it as if the disruption was a master craftsman removing everything that was not meant to stay. Now, for our emotional body. The emotional body has been in the waxing moon phase since the new moon on the 19th, building, gathering, calling in what the new astrological year is meant to hold. That building continues this week. The emotional body is not in crisis, but it is in honesty. Venus conjuncts Chiron at 25 degrees of Aries on Wednesday evening, and the heart meets the wound with clarity that the Mars and Uranus transits earlier in the day made possible. Sometimes disruption is the thing that cracks the protective layer enough that the tenderness underneath can finally be seen. Feed the emotional body through the full spectrum of this week. The freshness of the spring opening, the delicacy of what is still vulnerable, the warmth of what sustains. Now, to feed that, the first food I'm going to recommend is cucumber, mint, and finger lime salad. The opening emotional body food for the early part of this week. Cucumber is deeply cooling and calming. Neptune medicine that soothes the emotional body, preparing for the intensity that the middle of the week transits are going to bring. Mint opens and brightens without actually heating. And the finger limes, these extraordinary little pearls of citrus, burst on the tongue and carry the quality of surprise and delight that the emotional body needs to stay open rather than defensive as the week builds towards more challenging territory. Make it early this week. Let the cool brightness be the emotional body's preparation for what is coming. And next would be one of my absolute favorites, candied violets, the emotional body's tender medicine. Violets have been used for centuries in European herbalism tradition as heart medicine. They have a gentle, sweet flavor and carry a quality of permission for the emotional body to soften without collapsing. And the process of candying them in itself is an act of devotion. Each small flower coated individually in egg white and sugar and laid out to dry, the medicinal quality of something fragile being carefully preserved. You can make these in advance and eat them on Wednesday evening after the Venus Chiron conjunction lands. Let the sweetness and the delicacy be the body's acknowledgement that the wound is not weakness. It is where the real knowing lives. And that apple braised pork chops, the emotional body's sustaining warmth for the week. Pork braised low and slow with apples and aromatics until the meat is tender and the apples have dissolved into a sauce that is both sweet and savory and completely supporting. Apples carry Venus medicine and an ancient Celtic thread. The fruit of the other world in the ancestral tradition that knows how to hold both grief and beauty simultaneously. The slow braise is Bridget's method, sustained, gentle heat, tended with patience, transforming what is raw and resistance into something that nourishes deeply. Make this toward the end of the week when the emotional body has been through the honesty of Wednesday and needs to be held rather than challenged. Now, for some herbs. We're going to start off with calendula. This is the great solar emotional medicine and one of Bridget's most sacred herbs. Calendula literally tracks the sun. It opens in the morning light, it closes at dusk, it never loses its orientation toward the solar source, no matter what the weather does. For the emotional body this week, calendula supports that same capacity, the ability to maintain your orientation toward your own light, even when the sky is not cooperating. There is a profound grief and joy medicine in calendula that is rarely discussed. The golden flowers have long been used for the heart, holding loss and beauty simultaneously, which is precisely the emotional territory of Venus conjunct Chiron. Tea from the flowers daily or an infused oil pressed gently over the heart center. Let it be Bridget's flame tended in the emotional body. And then tarragon. This is the grace herb for the emotional body under fire. Tarragon is Mars and Venus together in one plant, the courage and the beauty, the directional force and the tenderness existing without contraindication. In the culinary tradition, tarragon is the herb that refines rather than dominates, the quiet complexity that makes everything around it fully itself. For the emotional body that is navigating the sharpness of Mercury square Mars and the vulnerability of Venus conjunct Chiron in the same day, tarragon offers that embodied knowing that grace and fire aren't necessarily opposites. They're the same thing at different temperatures. You can tincture or use it generously in food throughout the middle of the week. Next would be cornflower, which is named for the centaur Chiron himself, Centaurea Cyanus, carries the mythological medicine of the wound that teaches rather than destroys. Chiron was the great healer and the teacher of the ancient world. He was wounded by a poisoned arrow that could not be healed, who nonetheless transmitted his knowing to an entire generation of heroes and healers before he chose to relinquish his immortality and be placed among the stars. Cornflower has been used in the folk tradition for eye medicine, for seeing clearly through what has been clouded, and for emotional healing, specifically related to the wound that becomes the teacher. You can work with cornflower as a tea or a flower essence, especially on Wednesday and Thursday when the Chiron transits are active. Let the emotional body receive the teaching that the wound is carrying. Now, for your practice, I want you to do some mirror work with Bridget's flame. Light a candle. Set it on a surface where you can see both the flame and your own face in a mirror simultaneously. Stand or sit before the mirror with the candle flame reflected behind you or beside you, and let yourself be still. Look yourself in the eyes, not to perform anything, not to assess or critique what you see, but simply to be seen by yourself with the same quality of patient, steady attention that Bridget brings to her eternal flame. When something surfaces, let it. Wednesday night after Venus Chiron conjunction is the ideal time for this practice. The disruption of the day will have done the work of clearing the protective layer. What comes to the surface in the mirror is what was already there. It is now visible in the forge light. You are not looking for what is broken. You are looking for what the wound has been protecting. Stand before your mirror and candle flame. Look yourself in the eyes and ask, what tender truth have I been protecting myself from seeing? What does the wound actually want me to know? Now let's move on. Now, the energetic body has been in a process of reorganization since the equinox. And this week, the reorganization meets its first real test. As the outer scaffolding shifts under the Uranus and Saturn transits, the energetic field is asked to remain coherent without that structural support that it's been leaning on. This is not a small ask. The field that reorganized at the threshold now has to prove that it can hold its own shape when the external container moves. The fire practices for the energetic body this week are not about generating more energy. They are about building the internal structure that the energy moves through so that the field remains coherent even when the outer container does not. Some foods that will help you do that. Cacao energy bites. The energetic body's sustained fuel. Raw cacao carries theobromine, the gentle, sustained stimulant that supports the energetic field without the spike and the crash of caffeine. Keeping the field in a state of alert openness through the demanding middle of the week transits. You combine it with dates and seeds and nut butters. These bites become small packages of energetic body nourishment, quick to reach for between the intensity of Mars trine Pluto on Tuesday and Sun conjunct Saturn on Wednesday, and sustaining the field through what it is being asked to hold. Make a batch at the opening of the week. Keep them available. Let the energetic body know there is sustained fuel coming. Next would be sweet potato fries with Parmesan and garlic. The energetic body's grounding medicine midweek. As Uranus disrupts the outer scaffolding on Wednesday and the energetic field needs to find its own coherence. Sweet potato is the orange medicine of stability, warming and deeply grounding, feeding the lower energetic centers that anchor the field to the earth. Garlic is fiercely protective of the energetic body, clearing interference and sealing the field from the kind of energy that comes in through the cracks that disruption creates. And then Parmesan brings the savory density that the energetic body it craves when it's working hard to hold its own shape. Make these on Wednesday evening when, as a practical act of energetic grounding after the day's intensity. And then spicy stuffed peppers, the forage on the table for the energetic body. Bell peppers are the vessel, the container, and what they are stuffed with is fire. Spiced meat or grain, paprika and red pepper, and warming spice that activates the energetic body's own fire from the inside out. Paprika in particular has this quality of sustained warmth that is distinctly Aries, building heat slowly rather than shocking the system. For the energetic body, navigating the Saturn square Jupiter tension on Saturday, spicy stuffed peppers are the meal that says the energetic body can hold something rich and complex and well seasoned inside of a strong container without the container breaking. And then for herbs, rue is the most ancient protective herb in the Mediterranean tradition and one of the most direct Hephaestus herbs in the entire Materia Medica. Rue is fierce, bitter, precise, the herb that draws a clear boundary around the energetic field and holds it with the same unapologetic certainty that Hephaestus brought to his forge work. In the Italian and Greek ancestral traditions, rue was hung at the door and carried on the body as protection against the evil eye, against energetic interference, against the kind of field disruption that arrives when your life is reorganizing visibly and others project their own confusion onto it. For the energetic body this week, rue is the protective perimeter. Work with the dried herb as a talisman and as incense. This is a powerful plant and demands respect. And then basil. Basil is an energetic sovereignty herb from the Mediterranean tradition. Basil's aromatic oils carry a quality of protective clarity, specifically for the energetic body. In Ayurvedic medicine, Tulsi, holy basil, is the plant of the open heart with clear boundaries, the energetic body that remains receptive without becoming permeable. For this week's transits, where the structural disruption creates temporary openings in the energetic field, basil both protects those openings and supports the field's return to its own coherent shape. Fresh basil in food all week, and the aromatic oils from the fresh plant held to the nose as an immediate energetic body reset when your field feels scattered. And then Solomon's seal. Now, this is the great structural repair herb for the energetic body. Solomon seals works in the physical body on connective tissue, tendons, and the structures that hold things in proper relationship to each other. In the energetic body, it does the same work at the subtle level, restoring the proper relationship between the energetic centers that have been strained or pulled out of alignment by sustained stress or disruption. After the intensity of the Saturn, Uranus, and Mars transits in the middle of the week, Solomon's seal is the herb that helps the energetic body's structural integrity return, not to what it was before, but to what it is becoming. Tincture from Wednesday through the end of the week. And then for practices, breath of fire. So the energetic body's fire practice is exactly what it says it is. I want you to sit comfortably with your spine long, close your mouth, and begin rapid rhythmic breathing through the nose, pumping the navel point in on the exhale with each breath. The inhale is passive, the exhale is active, and the pace builds until the breath is moving fast and the navel is pumping with each out breath. Begin with 1 to 3 minutes and then sit in stillness afterward for the same length of time. Breath of fire activates the energetic body's own fire from the inside, clearing stagnation in the field, awakening the energetic centers, and building the kind of internal heat that does not depend on external conditions to sustain itself. This is the answer to this week's central question in the energetic body. The inner fire does not require the outer scaffolding to remain standing. It generates its own heat. After your breath of fire practice, sit in stillness and ask yourself, what stagnant energy has this week's disruption forced into motion? Where do you feel the difference between who you were on Monday and who you are right now? Now, spiritual body is where the deepest work of this week really and truly lives. Saturn sextile Pluto is a spiritual body transit at its foundation. What is real? What actually holds? What remains when everything that was borrowed or assumed has been removed? Venus conjunct Chiron reaches the spiritual body too, because the deepest wounds are spiritual ones. The ones about whether you're allowed to take up space, whether the knowing that you carry is legitimate, whether the forge was worth it. And this is where Bridget's triple flame becomes most essential. She does not tend one fire. She tends 3 simultaneously. Inspiration, craft, and healing are not separate domains in her tradition. They are 3 aspects of the same eternal flame. The spiritual body's work this week is to discover which of your 3 flames needs tending, and tend it, not because conditions are perfect, because the tending itself is part of the devotion. Now, for foods, Irish soda bread. This is the hearth bread of Bridget's tradition. And with the St. Patrick's feast last week, the cultural thread is very much alive. Soda bread is the bread of endurance, made from the simplest ingredients, without yeast, requiring no rising time and no perfect conditions. The bread of people who made bread because bread was needed, not because the moment was ideal. Buttermilk and flour and soda and a cross scored into the top to let Bridget's spirit in and the evil out. Make this on Saturday or Sunday and let the making of it be your act of devotion to the flame that tends itself regardless of circumstance. And then strawberry cinnamon mead, the ceremonial drink of the week. Hephaestus offering, the slow fermentation that is in itself a forge process. Mead is one of the oldest sacred drinks in the European tradition. Honey transformed by time and living culture into something that could not have been predicted from its ingredients. Spring strawberries bring Venus into the ferment, their sweetness and fragrance carrying the beauty that Hephaestus was always working towards, even in his exile. Cinnamon brings the Mars warmth that keeps the fermentation alive and moving. If you aren't making a proper fermented mead, this is a week to begin it. Knowing it will be ready long after the transits have moved on. If you do want something this week, add fresh strawberries and a cinnamon stick to a bottle of mead and let that infuse for a few days. Let the intention of the ferment be the ceremony. And then penna arrabbiata. The name literally means angry pasta. And that is precisely the point. Arrabbiata sauce is made from nothing but tomatoes, garlic, and as much chili as you can stand. Simmered until the anger becomes the flavor, until what started as heat becomes depth and complexity. Hephaestus was thrown from Olympus in anger. His or someone else's, depending on which version you read. And he took that anger into the forge and turned it into the armor of the gods. Arrabbiata is the spiritual body teaching of that myth on the table. The anger was real. The exile was real. And what was forged in those conditions was extraordinary. Make this on a night when the week has been too much and let the heat in the bowl be permission to feel all of it without apology. Now, as far as herbs, black cohosh. This is the initiatory herb of the spiritual body, the one that moves what has been locked in the deep tissue of the soul for too long. Black cohosh is a Pluto Saturn herb at its core. It works on the deep structural holding patterns, the long-term contraction in the nervous system and the musculature that reflects years of unexpressed grief, rage, or fear held in the spiritual body. Saturn sextile Pluto is asking the spiritual body to release what it has been gripping. And black cohosh supports exactly that release. Not forced, not sudden, but the slow, deliberate unwinding of what was never meant to be permanent. Tincture throughout the week in small, regular doses. This is a powerful plant and requires respect. Let it work slowly. Do not use it if you are pregnant. And then oak. This is Hephaestus's tree, the tree that survives lightning, the tree in the Druidic tradition held the sacred fires of the forge ceremonies. Oak teaches the spiritual body about the kind of strength that is not rigidity. The oak bends dramatically in storms that would shatter trees with less root and flex. And then it stands back up because the root goes down as far as the canopy goes up. For the spiritual body, navigating a week where the outer scaffolding is shifting, Oak says the root does not require the scaffolding to hold. It has its own structure. Work with the leaf, the bark, the acorn, or sit with the tree itself if you have access to one. Let the spiritual body remember what it is rooted in. And then chamomile. Chamomile is Bridget's gentle healer and the spiritual body's witness herb this week. Chamomile has been called the plant physician in the folk tradition, the herb that tends everything around it, including the soil that it grows in. The spiritual body it carries a quality of patient, faithful presence. The flame that does not need to burn dramatically to be real. In the chaos of the week with Uranus disruption and Saturn reality checks and the wound of the Venus Chiron conjunction, chamomile is the herb that keeps company with the spiritual body without demanding anything from it. Tea from the flowers daily. Let it be the quiet tending of your own eternal flame. Now, for your practice for the spiritual body this week, we're going to do a threefold fire meditation. This is Bridget's practice given directly to the spiritual body. Sit in front of a candle or a fire if you have one. Close your eyes and bring your awareness to your breath. Begin at the head. Visualize the first flame, the fire of inspiration. It lives in the mind and the creative intelligence, in the place where you receive what is beyond your own thinking. Let the flame be the color it wants to be. Feel its warmth spreading throughout the skull and down the neck. Breathe into it. Ask it what it is illuminating right now. Then move on to the heart and the solar plexus. Visualize the second flame, the fire of the forge. This is Hephaestus's fire, the fire of making and craft and the transformation of raw material into something that did not exist before. Let it be hotter than the first flame, more active. Feel it in the chest and in the gut and the hands. Breathe into it. Ask it, what is it currently working on in you? And then move to the deep belly and the root. Visualize the third flame, the fire of healing. This is the oldest fire of all, the one that burns beneath the wound and is not diminished by it, the one that Chiron carried even in his own unhealable condition. Let it be steady and low and absolutely certain. Breathe into it. Ask it, what is it healing in you right now? Not what you wish it were healing, but what is it actually attending to? Hold all three flames simultaneously for as long as you're able to. Notice whether they are the same size, the same color, the same temperature. Notice which one needs more tending. That is the answer to this week's deepest question. Which of Bridget's three flames feel most dim in you right now? Your inspiration, your creative forge, or your capacity to heal? What would it mean to tend that flame devotionally this week? Not because conditions are perfect, but precisely because they are not. If this is resonating with you, I'd love for you to like this video and share it with someone who needs it. And if you want to keep walking this path together, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so we never miss each other. I'm so glad you're here. So here's what this week is actually asking of you. Not to perform courage or to pretend the disruption is not real. Not to rush the forge or demand that the transformation announce its completion before it's actually finished. Not to abandon your inner compass just because the outer scaffolding shifted without your permission. Saturn sextile Pluto has been building since the 18th, and it is asking only one question. What in your life is actually real? Mars trine Pluto is offering you directed power to move what needs to move. The Sun conjunct Saturn is asking you to look honestly at what it is that you're building. The Sun sextile Pluto is confirming that the depth underneath that honesty is where your actual power lives. Venus conjunct Chiron is showing you the wound, not to reopen it, but to show you how far your healing has come. And Mercury sextile Neptune at the end of the week is the inner compass coming back online, cleaner and more calibrated than before the disruption arrived. The forge did not ask your permission, but it is working in service of something real in you. This week, tend Bridget's flame, not dramatically, not publicly, as a private devotional act in whatever body needs it most. Hold the isometric position past the discomfort. Do the forge reframe before the mental body gets occupied. Stand before your mirror with a candle. Breathe fire into the energetic body and sit with your three flames long enough to feel which one needs tending. Eat the food that carries the ancestral thread, the slow braised bone medicine, the hearth bread, the angry pasta, the ceremonial meat beginning its long ferment. Let the table be a forge. And if you're feeling this week in your bones, if you are navigating your own version of scaffolding that shifted and an inner compass that you're working to reclaim, this is exactly the territory of the five bodies assessment is built to illuminate. The full assessment looks at how your natal chart, your constitution, and your fragmentation patterns are interacting with exactly these kinds of transits, where your particular structure is strong and where it needs the forge, and what foods and herbs and practices will restore the integration to your five bodies moving forward. Now, the mini assessment will give you focused clarity on where to begin. The full assessment gives you the complete picture, including medical astrology and in-depth natal chart. If you start with the mini, your investment credits fully toward a full assessment within 30 days. Fragmentation is the disease. Integration is the medicine. Both are available at GaiaSanctorum.com and in the links in the description below. And if you want to join a community where the forge work is actually witnessed and supported, where you can go deeper without judgment and walk alongside others who are in exactly the same terrain, Empowered Authenticity is waiting for you. It is free, it is uncensored, and it is built for integration, not fragmentation. The link is also in the description. Bridget tends three flames simultaneously, not when conditions are perfect, not when the scaffold holds, not when the wound is healed. She tends them now, in the fire, in the forge, in the middle of everything that arrived without permission and is asking everything of her anyway. That is your invitation this week. You did not choose the disruption. You did not choose the timing. You did not ask the scaffold to shift on exactly the week. You were just finding your Aries footing. But here's what's also true. The inner compass that you carry did not come from the scaffold. It came from decades of tending, from every hard thing that burned away what was not true and left what was, from the wound that would not let you settle for less than the real work. The forge doesn't ask your permission, but you are always the one doing the forging. This is Living the Wheel, where we follow the cycles of nature and the cosmos and the wisdom of the five bodies to navigate our human experience with ancient knowing and embodied practice. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Danielle, and I'll see you in the next one.